All right, hello and yeah, welcome. I realize I'm everything that's standing between you and your lunch, so I try to be on time, and I think I can make the time here worthwhile. Well, the whole point of this talk is to give an overview of what actually is currently going on in the world of malware, what attacks we are currently seeing, and then also to discuss a little bit what countermeasures currently are effective and what direction the development of those countermeasures are taking. Cybercrime has become a real big business, and recently there were some cases that finally actually document how big those incidents are. One recent example is a cybercrime ring that got busted just a couple of weeks ago. And the FBI, in combination with a bunch of other services, were following them for a little bit over a year. And in that period of time, that cybercrime ring, with the help of an off-the-shelf Trojan, they have been using Zeus for the operations, was able to cause damages in excess of $70 million US. And they were actually trying to do damages of around about $220 million US. Part of that damage could be averted because the authorities already were on their heels. So that's just one case to give you an impression about what we are talking about if we are talking about international cybercrime, the motivation they have, and then also what resources they do have available. Yesterday I tried to Google a little bit around about the biggest bank case, and I found actually one bank case that was bigger. After the initial bombing of Iraq, apparently someone stole $1 billion US from some bank in Iraq. Apart from that, I think this is like the biggest bank case so far in history. And it was not just one single bank case, but hundreds of small businesses that have been targeted by this operation. Another example where a lot of money is to be made is in the world of scareware, fake antivirus, fake system tools. I was talking about this last year in a little bit more detail about an operation that we followed for a while. And this operation now also has been sentenced in the US, or more or less the head people of this operation have been sentenced to pay back damages of $163 million US that they have been causing. Here it says just to Americans. I think that is an error. It's probably worldwide. But again, another example of why we're seeing this whole pest of different fake antivirus products, scareware things. It's just a lot of money that the people can be made by that.
This is doesn't happen very often, but does Ralph Philipp Weinmann happen to be in here? Because he should report to the registration desk right away. So if you happen to know him, can contact him, Mr. Weinmann. Please register at the desk. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I could grab some water in that time. Yeah, then another example of why it's worth not only for big cybercrime rings to operate, but also for individuals and smaller operations. There still is a thriving underground market, and this underground market, well, basically you can pretty much buy and sell every service that you want to have. And the cybercriminals are also shifting their business models. 10 years ago, they were just buying and selling credit card numbers. And credit card numbers have become essentially worthless. 10 years ago, they traded for maybe $10 each. And nowadays, they are trading for 10 cents if you do get any money for that. So that's a price drop of 99%. But then cybercriminals just move on to new targets. And new targets are now complete dumps of the magnetic stripes or, well, all the information that is necessary to recreate those dumps. And they are still being traded for quite a lot of money. And so it's still worth trying to get those information. It's no longer worth trying to steal credit card from end users. but it is worth to break into financial institutions, people's companies who are doing payment processing, where you can steal this kind of data and get rich by it. This is all made very easy by well, all the tools that you want to have being available for sale on the black market. Those tools are professionally developed and are constantly being improved. And the prices varied quite a lot, as we will see on the next slide. But, well, if you want to start a cybercrime empire, all you need to do is first learn Russian or learn how to use Google translation tools to get through the underground forums. Buy or take a pirated illegal copy of one of those toolkits, and then you can pretty much start your own empire with that. This is an example of one of the most prolific toolkits, Zeus. Zeus has been around since 2006, and this is just an overview of the different versions of Zeus that we are aware of. It's not necessarily absolutely complete, so if you have got a version that we don't have, we would like to see that. And with the development of Zeus, it kind of gives an impression of how those underground or crime toolkits are being developed, what new improvements are being made, and also the fluctuation in prices. Zeus was available for pretty much every amount between $500 US and over $10,000 US, just depending on if there was something new, cool added to it that made it more easy for criminals to use it. And now with Zeus, there is a very interesting thing happening over the last couple of weeks again. There is another toolkit that just appeared at the end of last year, and that has also become fairly popular, SpyEye. And a couple of weeks ago, the authors behind SpyEye posted on various forums that they have been taking over the source code from Zeus, that Slavik, probably the one person who was behind Zeus, lost interest and would stop developing Zeus. And now people who have been using SpyEye can upgrade to Zeus for a small amount of money. And what's very interesting is that only the author of SpyEye had anything to say. Slavik hasn't been heard of for the last couple of months, so I'm not quite sure if he just got lost somewhere out in the woods or something. So that may be an interesting development there. And the problem there now is that two, well, let's say really good, really dangerous toolkits are being merged together. So let's see what's happening out of there. With the availability of such toolkits for everyone can just like download, install like his own Trojan creator, and then just run it to create Trojans, check against current antivirus software to make sure that it's not detected when he's sending out. This had some quite dramatic changes on the landscape of malware. People just created more and more Trojans that were not detected by signature-based AV at the moment of their creation, send it out, and then the next day they would just create more versions. And this is an arms race that had been started in 2006, and that unfortunately is still going on fairly strong. Currently, we are seeing around about 60,000 unique binaries, or unique new Trojans mostly, on each and every day. So that's a race that is really hard to win with signature-based antivirus. Actually, I would say that race has been lost to signature-based antivirus. New technologies needed to be developed to try to cope with that. For one thing, in the back end of antivirus producers or anti-malware producers, we are relying very heavily on automation nowadays, automatic analysis, as you can imagine. I mean, 60,000 Trojans a day. How many thousand researchers would you need to even try to add detection for that manually? And then, well, new technologies, especially all the cloud-based security services, of which I will be talking later about, have gained quite a lot of importance to actually successfully fight against that wave of malware. Then when we are looking about on the top 10 different pieces of malware that we are seeing globally, we see one interesting thing: adware suddenly has been coming back. We pretty much thought the problem of adware that's something of the past. We didn't really see much adware lately, and now it seems some people have figured out that they can. Instead of distributing fake antivirus software or something like that, they can just distribute old-style adware with the same methods as kind of drive-by downloads, where vulnerabilities in browsers, etc., are exploited to install adware on hundreds of thousands of machines and getting paid the money for the installations. Apart from that, number one detection worldwide is still an auto-run worm. Auto-run worms are a little bit, we see less than we have seen some months ago, but they are still really, really strong. It still seems that many people aren't really thinking about USB sticks, cameras, anything that basically is a USB storage that can be made to automatically run. And that's kind of weird. I mean, people have been talking about that now for years, that they are dangerous, and it's fairly easy to completely turn off auto-run nowadays. But even within companies, apparently this is not done a lot. With so many criminals trying to get information from people's PCs, but also using botnets to send out spam and other things, we are still seeing a strong growth in the number of machines that become zombies each month. Currently, we are still seeing around about 6 million new PCs every month that are new members of botnets, and we do expect a rise here. Many of you have probably noticed that Lab, one of the biggest botnets on the planet, has been taken down a couple of months ago. And that botnet probably had something around about 30 million computers in it. And there will certainly be other botnets that try to take the space that Lab has been taking. We've seen that before when a bunch of other botnets have been taken down, that suddenly was a real increase in the number of new infections each month. So that number is very likely to go up again. Then malware within social networks, mostly Coopface. Interestingly, we have seen a lot less variants of Coopface than we have before. And even more interesting, we have seen now variants of Coopface that try to check what kind of operation system it is you're running. And they can and will also successfully infect a Mac. So that may be the last warning call that you have. If you still think, I'm running a Mac, I'm automatically immune to all malicious threats, think again. Fake security software is obviously still going really, really strong. And it's interesting to see that Innovative Marketing Ukraine has been taken down. And they were responsible for right about 50% of the fake AV market back then. And when they got taken down, there was a visible dent in the total number of unique samples that we have seen. And now other companies have taken over that business, have filled the gap. And we are still seeing something around about 150 to 200,000 new and unique fake AV things on a monthly basis. Back to Zeus again as one of the toolkits that is most widely used by criminals. There are lots of different campaigns that people are running with Zeus, and it's kind of interesting to see with the different campaigns when they are spamming out Zeus Trojans back to the world. Some of those campaigns are really limited in focus as to which countries they are attacking or in which countries those emails are being sent. And then some other campaigns are just going globally without any clear targets. That's kind of interesting to see is where people are trying to launch their attack, where people are trying to get computers infected and get them in part of the botnet. And again, to give you an idea of how many different groups are running Zeus campaigns, this is like the number of websites that we are tracking that are hosting Zeus binaries. The number is fluctuating, but there are at any given time around about 1,000 to 2,000 different big enough operations that we actually discover them running Zeus to create their own botnet to try to steal banking credentials to cause financial damage. So again, quite a big problem on that side. And again, with Zeus, there was an interesting development a couple of months ago, where there now is an add-on for Zeus that is actually meant to be run on a smartphone. Basically, it's to enable the attacker to get behind two-factor authentication, where a bank is sending you an SMS on your mobile phone to verify your transaction. So this is not a widespread danger at the moment. It's more like a proof of concept showing that this can be done. But this unfortunately also shows that the attackers are already thinking ahead, new security measures. What can the attackers do to get around those new security measures to make sure that they still can maintain their stream of income? For distributing malwares, well, drive-by downloads are still a big thing, and to get people to their websites, there are basically still two attacks happening. For one thing, automated, mostly SQL injection attacks on websites, on web pages, to get iframes in one form or the other, pointing to an attack or exploit server. And the other one is to poison search terms. In particular, if a disaster is happening, that's a very good opportunity for a criminal to set up a web page and get this web page ranked really high within Google search. So if there's, well, if you Google for Haiti, it's like not really easy to poison Google and such that your search term appears really high. And then why would people Google for Haiti in the first way? If there is a major earthquake in Haiti, then suddenly people start Googling for Haiti earthquake, and that combination has not been used so much before, so that makes it really easy to launch a bunch of web pages that at least for a day gets you on the top 10 of Google search results. Same if an artist dies or something like that, poisoning Michael Jackson as a search term is fairly difficult. Poisoning Michael Jackson death at the moment when he dies, that's fairly easy to poison until the major news agencies come up with that. And then those searches take you to sites that either also try to attack you by way of drive-by downloads or are just using other social engineering measures, mostly pointing to some kind of fake video where unfortunately you need to download a codec to see that video. And the providers are so nice that you actually can click anywhere on that video and the codec download starts immediately. And there are still many, many thousands of people falling for such kind of scams on a daily basis. When we were looking a little bit about Google search terms and how dangerous they are, we figured out that in 60% of the top Google search terms, there are malicious sites within the first 100 search results. So that was kind of a scary outcome when we looked at that kind of things. Then, another view of data that we have. With our web and domain reputation services, we do track quite a lot of different categories of websites. And currently, by far, the biggest category is malicious websites. That doesn't mean that malicious websites are so much more common than anything else. It's just that we are actively trying to hunt them down. So don't let yourself be confused as malicious sites being the number one on this list. However, what's a little bit worrying is the total number of sites that we currently are aware of that are hosting malware, that are hosting exploits, that are trying to damage, trying to do some kind of damage to people who visit those sites. And that's also posing a little bit of a problem of trying to get those sites down. If you go to any known registrar and say, hey, I've got this list of 1 million websites that violate your terms of services, would you please start to take them down? I think that's a pretty good denial of service attack against any of those. Yeah, then the biggest problems that many corporations are currently facing are targeted attacks. We have seen a number of targeted attacks being talked about in the media, but those are normally a chosen few. Most of you have heard about Operation Aurora, I guess, at the beginning of this year. There are a number of other attacks that also are getting some media attention, but mostly all those targeted attacks are flying completely below the radar. The companies and organizations that are being attacked typically don't hold a press conference saying, yeah, we've been attacked and this is what they stole, and yeah, it's a little bit embarrassing, but it's just the way it is. This doesn't happen. What happened in this case is that a senior Pentagon officer released information about an incident where basically it's where basically the military central command network has been compromised by such a targeted attacks. And that's probably one of the best defended networks on the planet. And if that network can fall victim to such targeted attacks, then you can just imagine that for targeted attacks, they do happen on a daily basis, and it's really, really difficult to completely attack against them. Then also with targeted attacks, there is a difference that should be made. Many people nowadays are all the time talking about advanced persistent threats, just because someone sent you a document that is more or less social engineered for your needs. There is a difference between a targeted attack that just an attacker is doing against maybe you personally or against a corporation. And then if he sees, well, this attack was not successful, he just moves on to the next target. And then the so-called APTs, where there typically is an organization behind that tries with a lot of resources and over a long period of time, again and again, to get some foothold into your network. And those are the most dangerous attacks as far as it comes to stopping. For example, one ongoing attack against international European banking institutions is pretty much always geared around the G20. And this kind of attack has been going on for many, many months now, where every now and then a new wave of attack is being sent to a singled out target within various of those banking organizations throughout Europe. So that's just one example of one of those attacks that no one really talks about, that happens in the background. And there are many, many more. If you're a company that deals something with military equipment, then you certainly are a target. If you're a government organization, you constantly are a target. And people will try over and over again to just get at you. They do have the resources in place to support those attacks. Very often when there is a bigger event, we see that there have been O-days used that so far were not, or at least have not been seen anywhere else. And O-days are pretty expensive. So if you already have the money available to dish out 50K for a cool O-day to get at someone's computer, that means that you are more than just a normal cyber criminal who is running that attack. Then very often we are seeing that the attacker are using customized malware, and of course they are making sure that no signature-based antivirus product on the planet is detecting that customized malware at the moment they are sending it out. And surprisingly then some of the bigger operations, they just use off-the-shelf malware For example, GhostNet, an operation against a lot of international institutions in combination with Tibet. They just use, I think it was Poison Ivy, just your average, download it, configure it to your needs kind of malware. And we see that the social engineering factor of those targeted attacks is getting better. It's no longer that people are just sending out an email, here's this cool attachment, and why don't you just open it and click on it. Very often those attacks are now using different attack vectors. Fairly often we are seeing now instant messaging and social networking sites like Facebook being used to carry out those attacks instead of just sending out your average email with attachment. So those attacks are going on constantly. And I guess I can't really talk about any ongoing attacks in the malware world without touching Stuxnet. I'm not going to bore you to death with Stuxnet, just, well, a fairly short summary maybe for those two people in the room who haven't heard of it. Stuxnet basically was, well, like the first kind of malware weapon that we've seen. It appears to have been specifically written to detect a certain piece of hardware that is being monitored by a computer. That certain piece of hardware is well, pretty certain, or at least the researchers from Symantec are pretty certain, that it is a uranium enrichment centrifuge. And if it would find that piece of hardware, it would just change the operating parameters of it, changing it in a way that probably either would wreck the hardware or maybe wreck the process. And Stuxnet apparently was meant to specifically target well, one side, and it was written with a lot of care to not do collateral damage in the way it really made sure that it is this specific piece of hardware it can attack. Otherwise, it would just spread. And in spreading, it used a number of different O-days. One of the O-days was an LMK vulnerability that hits all versions of Windows back to Windows 95. And that vulnerability alone was probably already worth hundreds of thousands on the black market if you happen to sell it. And it uses at least 3 other O-days, and it looks like there may be even more things that have been used to spreading. So there may be even more news about Stuxnet in the future. Well, I said the authors were careful to not do collateral damage. I guess the authors failed completely. When they choose to create Stuxnet as a worm, sooner or later worms tend to get out of control and affect other things. And in fact, Stuxnet was detected maybe 1 year after the initial attack, simply because it went out of control and was seen at some other sites. And now Stuxnet has been seen on a global basis. The data that actually is behind this data is not from companies being infected. This is data from our consumer product that offers the ability to report back to us if the user opts in. Unfortunately, we don't get any reports from corporate sites how many of those are seeing Stuxnet or are being infected by Stuxnet. And there were reports in the news that in particular China was struggling with quite a lot of Stuxnet infections, but that again is really difficult to verify. So even an attack that was so targeted as Stuxnet, simply because they choose like a worm as their attack vector, is running out of control and is spreading around the world. And it's kind of difficult to actually remove a Stuxnet installation. Well, then there's this in the cloud thingy that people have been talking about over the last year as the silver bullet to solve all your problems. If you're looking at the cloud services a little bit more in detail, they are basically around since 3 years, and by now pretty much antivirus vendor has implemented those in the cloud security services in one way or the other. So here's an example of how those basically work. No one is really giving too much information on a technical level of how exactly they are working. The basic idea is there is a new file on a computer that comes by email, web, network, or whatever vector, and there is no detection with signature or normal heuristics. However, the file is suspicious. Suspicious means, for example, if it is an autorun file, then we always think it's suspicious, and we will also always ping such a cloud query. And there are other factors for files where files are matching certain criteria that make them look suspicious. And then, well, what happens is that the cloud is queried. So we are using DNS, others are using OpenSSL to exchange that kind of information. And what is being sent then is basically a fingerprint of the file and some additional metadata. I will come back to that, some additional metadata point later. And then that fingerprint is compared to known other fingerprints that are available on the backend server. And then, the result is being returned, yeah, this is a known malicious file, or no, this is a cool file, we know it's in our whitelist, or it's somewhere in the blacklist in between. And then the information is getting back to the client that queried. So basically what all this is getting you is a lot of speed in detection, which is currently the major benefit of all those cloud services. At the moment, when a new piece of malware is being normally automatically processed by an anti-malware vendor, he immediately updates the central cloud services, and then detection is available globally for everyone without updating the current antivirus, the current signature files. So this is a lot of speed that you can gain with it. And this is also the speed necessarily to even think about being successful in fighting against this flood of Trojans that is around. If you look at the basic idea, however, you see it's like not really that new. Basically, all those magic in the cloud security things, they are, well, compare them to file reputation services. And now reputation services have been around for a long time. They have been around to fight spam, they have been around to warn of malicious websites, etc. So it's, this is also where the combination of different reputation services in the future may make more sense. There are two major problems with the current implementations of all those in the cloud security services. Most of those are at the moment comparing fingerprints, digital cryptographic hashes of a file, and then determining, yeah, this file is good or this file is evil. And one attack against this kind of detections is, of course, true server-side polymorphism. If you've got a piece of malware on a server side that every time when you try to download it, just some bits are being changed, this will throw those cloud security services, well, completely off. And then the other problem is the detection is obviously only available when you're online. In most cases, except for auto-run malwares, you can't really infect your computer if you're not online, not realistically. But there's also another scenario to which I'll come back later, that is you've got an outbreak situation in a network, and the piece of malware that is breaking out is actually not detected with signatures at the moment, but with information that is in the cloud. Because your policy says, oh, in a case of outbreak, I need to shut down my internet gateway to make sure no data is being transmitted to the outside world, and boom, there goes your detection for that piece of malware that you're currently struggling with. So that's another situation where companies suddenly found, with my old policies, I can't really fight that piece of malware any longer. So it's, that's another interesting problem that needs to be addressed in the future. So it's, currently it's with the in the cloud services. We are kind of playing in the area of real-time protection, or real-time detection of new malicious files, and well, current developments are going into this more predictive area. That we are using more information, more metadata, to try to create more generic detections. Well, I was mentioning that basically all those cloud security things for detection of malware basically are just a file reputation. And there are other reputation services out there. So one development that is going on at the moment on a large scale is to take all the different reputation services and correlate the information that we are getting back. All the reputation services, if you look up an email server to figure out if it is in a black hole server, if it is in a black hole list, you as the one who asked the query, you are getting the information, yeah, it's in the black hole list or it's not in the black hole list. The one who's running the reputation service is getting the information, hey, this server has been asked for to check. And similar is true for pretty much all the reputation services. If if a client runs Artemis, then we get the information roughly in this regional on the planet. Suddenly someone was looking up this fingerprint. With our domain reputation services, if someone uses Site Advisor to check a website before he's browsing there, then we get the information, hey, this website has been asked for. So there is a lot of data that can be correlated in the background, and that's just something that we and also others are just about starting to do now. To give you an idea of what kind of data we are talking about, obviously I'm not in the position of data that other vendors have. They don't normally talk about it. But at least here's the total number of data that we are getting. We typically, within a month, are getting north of 100 billion queries in the various reputation services that we have. And this is a lot of data that can be mined to figure out correlations between a malicious piece of software, sites where we have seen it on, then other sites that have been other domains that have been registered by the same kind of person, or other domains that are running within the same kind of bad IP reputation. Then if you know those other sites, send our crawlers to it and start downloading things. There's a lot of information that can be correlated, and basically we are just starting doing that right now. So that's something that will yield more results in the future, getting all the different services together. An example of how this kind of correlations is starting to work. In this case, a domain has been registered and flagged because the registrar has been known to register other malicious domains before. And sometimes later, suddenly that domain was used in a massive iframe attack that was linking to that domain. So then we already knew, yeah, that domain is evil, so that link was blocked. But then also we got notified there is now massive request for that domain. We better take a look of what is going on there, so so that we could then hunt down the iframe attack itself, and then also hunt down the malware that finally was being distributed by this kind of attack. So this is like what will be happening in the background more and more with those services. Well, I was already saying that for the file reputation services, basically a digital fingerprint is being sent and some metadata. That metadata is a little bit interesting, and you really should ask your AV vendor what exactly he is transmitting. In our case, what we are transmitting in addition is a very rough information. This file came from USB or web download, or it came from a network. And if there would be more metadata like file name, behavior, etc., then this would make it possible to create much more effective detection. Then on the other side, we need to be really, really careful of what kind of metadata that basically belongs to the customer we are sending to us. So this will be like kind of a balance act for the future. I was talking about server-side polymorphism as a very easy way to throw off cloud-based detection. However, if you have just a little bit more information about the file itself, maybe about its basic behaviors in the first moment it is running, then suddenly server-side polymorphism is not a problem any longer to detect like all the programs that have been created with a certain engine online. Then to finish it off, I did already mention the problems of being infected and you don't know it, but we know about it in the cloud. This is the kind of scenario that simply can happen if detection is not available with a local product, but just with a cloud service. Where you have got the problem if the cloud service is not available, maybe because you shut down the gateway, maybe because someone was trying to be funny and DDoS it away. For any of those reasons, this can get you in a quite difficult situation. So another development in the field of cloud security services is to like move that cloud or move at least part of the cloud back into your network, so that you've got like a copy of the cloud that is still available in case the real cloud is not there. So this is currently another development that is going on when it's relying more and more on those reputation services. Obviously, we need to make sure that those reputation services are also available in case, simply our services are not online. Then to finish it all off, there are a couple of more technologies that are still, waiting on the horizon to make a bigger impact. For application control or whitelisting, people basically have been talking about whitelisting as a better solution for the better part of 20 years now. And currently it never really took off. The major problem of whitelisting is, for one thing, there are a lot of more known non-malicious files than there are malicious ones. If you look at the website of Bit9, they used to have a counter of the number of known white applications that they're monitoring. And while malicious applications are now in the 50 million, they were talking more about 6 billion known whitelist hashes. And then another issue was that for such a solution to scale within a larger network with so many different pieces of software that continuously want to update themselves. With the recent versions of those various whitelisting applications, it is now, at least for servers, kind of possible to use those to protect your servers. And I would really suggest that you monitor what's going on there or take a look at it. Whitelisting actually is the best approach to protect servers, especially against targeted attacks. It's much more efficient than relying on an antivirus technology where you know the attacker has been doing his QA before and make sure that technology is not effective against this particular attack. Then another thing that people were talking about a lot and no one really has seen any results is in real behavior-based detection. Behavior-based detection will be a supporting technology for extending the current detection that can be achieved with cloud-based services. You still probably won't see many products claiming they are doing like full behavior detection and actually detecting something with it. It is very difficult to determine the difference between a non-malicious service and a malicious service just based on behavior. Most of you know what I'm talking about. If you take a debugger and just run a comparison, what kind of system calls is VNC making, what kind of system call is Netbus making, and how the hell is the software supposed to tell the difference if you hardly can with a debugger. And other technologies that also have been used with the net visualizations, or has been discussed with the net visualization in the talk before. On the network, you can detect a lot of Trojan activities, a lot of malicious traffic, really, really easy. You just have to look, and you just have to need the right tools to visualize it. And that's, technology that is still being worked on, still is like in fairly early stages. And then you've got a treasure cove inside your network that you probably kind of know about it, but don't really care about it. When we're doing forensics in a case where there has been like a Trojans inside a network, normally the best source of information is to look at the DNS server. And of course you can also look at your DNS server before it is actually a case for forensics. A lot of worms, a lot of Trojans will appear in your DNS server as something that it looks irregular. You just need to find ways how to siphon through all the data. All right, then I think it's just about time for lunch. I'm still around for any more questions for the today and tomorrow. So just grab me either at lunch or later at the bar. And with that, I thank you for your patience. And any questions?
Are there any questions? Please try. Please be bold. Just signify. Questions?
I think they're all hungry.
Or does anybody know some guys from the other side about bringing them here to speak, maybe in ninja form? We keep hearing about there's so many means that the other side has to actually create botnets or whatever. How do we know this? Do you have any connections?
Well, most of it is just intelligence that we are getting when analyzing a piece of malware. Then obviously we know where it tries to connect to, and then we just check what is there on the other side. And a lot of the data that has been presented is also like a correlation of all the different reputation services that we've got. And then also our researchers are curious humans. So most of the information about certain botnets, about certain Trojan kits, etc., that typically comes from researchers that very often in the spare time is taking a deeper look at a certain piece of malware that you've got, trying to figure out where does it come from, who's behind that, trying to browse through forums. It is surprising how easy it is to get in a lot of underground forums, or just use Google Cache to get those sites displayed, and then use Google Language Tool to get a translation of the Google Cache site. It's kind of cumbersome, but it works. And then you get also a lot of information about what the criminals are currently up to. It's like kind of not our day job, but that's something that we pretty much do for fun in our free time.
Any more questions?
I think they really are hungry.
Well, if you have any more questions, please catch him at lunch or later on. Just a reminder there, tomorrow evening after the whole thing, we will gather at MetaLab for some more talks, and we'd like to encourage you to do some lightning talk on your own topic. And of course, when he's around, ask him more questions there. And tune into IRC channel DeepSec for direct feedback. As for now, enjoy your lunch, and I hope to see you back after the break here in Pirouette, and Astera will be taking over the session. Thank you very much, and thank you.